She thought her diamond status gave her the right to crush the ugly girl next to her. She thought the man in the dirty hoodie was trash she could toss out with the garbage. But she made a fatal miscalculation. That bum isn't a passenger, he is the captain of this flight, and he is about to turn her world upside down. You are about to witness the most satisfying instant karma in aviation history. We live in a world where money often screams while kindness is silenced. It makes your blood boil, doesn't it? Watching good, humble people get trampled by arrogance just because they don't wear designer labels. It's a pain. We all know the feeling that the bullies always win while the good guys finish last. But not today. Today, the script flips. This is the story of Ellie, a woman of grace, and Adam, a pilot in disguise conducting the ultimate social experiment. What begins as a heartbreaking display of cruelty transforms into a legendary lesson in humility. We promise you a journey that goes from rage to tears, and finally, to a vindication so sweet you'll feel it in your bones. But be warned, before the gavel of justice strikes, you will have to endure the injustice. You will see innocent tears, security escorts, and a level of entitlement that will make you want to jump through the screen. It gets ugly before it gets beautiful. If you believe that character is worth more than cash, and you're ready to stand with the underdogs, then you've found your family. Smash that subscribe button to join our community of truth seekers, hit the like to show that kindness still matters, and let's fly into this storm together. The atmosphere inside the first-class cabin was already charged with a static electricity that had nothing to do with the aircraft's avionics. It was the suffocating pressure of entitlement radiating from seat 1A, occupied by a woman whose very posture screamed arrogance. She was draped in a cashmere shawl that likely cost more than the average mortgage payment, and she adjusted her oversized sunglasses indoors, a clear signal that she considered herself a VIP passenger above the laws of social nicety. She tapped her manicured nails impatiently on the armrest, her eyes scanning the boarding door like a predator waiting for prey, ready to unleash some airport rage at the slightest provocation. Then, Ellie Walker stepped onto the plane, bringing with her a starkly different energy. She was clutching a worn-out tote bag and wearing a comfortable, oversized cardigan that had seen better days, looking nothing like the typical clientele of the front cabin. Her hair was pulled back in a messy, practical bun, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing a raw, honest exhaustion. She checked her boarding pass, a miraculous upgrade she clearly hadn't expected, and hesitated. You could see the imposter syndrome washing over her as she realized her assigned seat was 1B, right next to the high-maintenance woman in 1A. As Ellie Walker approached, offering a tentative, polite smile to her seatmate, the reaction was immediate and visceral. The VIP didn't just frown, she recoiled physically, pressing herself against the window as if Ellie were contagious. "Excuse me?" the woman barked, her voice cutting through the ambient chatter of the cabin. "Is this a joke?" She didn't look at Ellie, she looked through her, addressing the air with a heartless disdain that made everyone nearby freeze. It was the kind of plane drama that makes your stomach turn, watching someone be reduced to nothing in seconds. A flight attendant hurried over, her professional mask straining against the awkwardness of the situation. "How can I help you, ma'am?" she asked, though she clearly dreaded the answer. The VIP pointed a trembling finger at Ellie, who was now standing in the aisle, clutching her bag to her chest like a shield. "Get this person away from me. I paid for a premium experience, not to sit next to someone who looks like they just crawled out of a sewer." The cruelty was breathless, a shocking display of true colors that left the cabin in stunned silence. Ellie Walker felt the heat rise to her cheeks, a burning mix of shame and confusion. She tried to speak, her voice trembling, I have a ticket for this seat," but she was cut off instantly. "I don't care what you have," the VIP spat, her face twisted in disgust. "I refuse to endure a flight next to someone so visually offensive. It's disgusting." It was a moment of pure, unadulterated arrogance, the kind that makes you question humanity. Bystanders shifted in their seats, adhering to the mind-your-own-business code, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. The flight attendant looked helpless, caught between a wealthy frequent flyer and a passenger who had every right to be there. "Ma'am, the flight is fully booked," the crew member whispered, trying to de-escalate the airport rage. But the VIP was relentless. "Then move her to the back. Put her in the cargo hold for all I care. Just get her out of my sight." Ellie stood there, the rejected seatmate, stripped of her dignity in front of strangers. It was a brutal scene, a stark reminder of how money often masquerades as superiority. In that moment, Ellie Walker had a choice: fight or fold. But the weight of the humiliation was too heavy, and the VIP's venom was too potent. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, not from weakness, but from the sheer shock of being treated like garbage. She looked around, hoping for an ally, but found only averted gazes. The VIP passenger smirked, sensing victory, unaware that this display of ugliness was being recorded in the ledger of instant karma, and the bill would come due sooner than she thought. Rather than causing a scene or fighting fire with fire, Ellie Walker made a move that spoke volumes about her character. She took a deep, shuddering breath, swallowed the lump in her throat, and nodded at the beleaguered flight attendant. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the auxiliary power unit. "I don't want to cause any trouble. Is there anywhere else I can sit?" It was a heartbreaking surrender, a decision to absorb the plane drama into her own soul rather than let it spill over onto everyone else. The flight attendant, looking visibly relieved but also deeply guilty, checked her tablet frantically. I only have a jump seat available near the galley, or a broken seat in the last row that doesn't recline," she admitted, her voice low. It was an insult to injury, downgraded from first class to the worst spot on the plane solely because of someone else's arrogance. But Ellie simply adjusted her tote bag and gave a sad, small smile. "That's fine. Please, show me the way." She chose peace over justice, a move that is often mistaken for weakness but is actually pure strength. As Ellie Walker began the long, lonely walk away from seat 1B, the VIP let out a loud, theatrical sigh of relief, practically preening in her victory.
"Finally," the woman muttered, pulling out a sanitizer wipe to vigorously scrub the armrest Ellie hadn't even touched. The sheer nastiness of the act was nauseating. Ellie kept her head high, though her shoulders slumped slightly under the weight of the humiliated feeling that clung to her like a second skin. She walked past rows of passengers who now watched her with a mix of pity and indifference. She settled into a cramped, uncomfortable seat near the back, squeezing her knees against the hard plastic of the seat in front. It was a far cry from the wide leather armchair she had been promised. The air here was stale, and the noise of the galley was constant. Yet, Ellie didn't complain. She pulled a book from her bag of paperback with a cracked spine and tried to disappear into its pages. She was a picture of grace under fire, a stark contrast to the heartless display occurring in the front of the plane. Let's be honest, seeing someone take the high road like this makes your blood boil on their behalf, doesn't it? It's a test of our own values. Most of us would have screamed, demanded a manager, or refused to move. But Ellie Walker possessed a quiet dignity that the VIP couldn't buy with all the money in the world. She sat in the cramped space, closing her eye for a moment to compose herself, refusing to let one person's misery define her journey. It was a masterclass in emotional discipline. However, the universe abhors a vacuum, and injustice creates a pressure that demands release. While Ellie sat in the back, trying to make herself invisible, the energy on the plane had shifted. The passengers who had witnessed the event were uncomfortable. The air felt wrong. That empty seat in 1B was now a gaping maw of awkwardness. Don't judge the situation as over yet, because the narrative was just pause and take a breath before the real catalyst arrived. Ellie Walker might have thought her part in the drama was over, relegated to the shadows of the economy cabin. She accepted her fate as a rejected seatmate, believing that was just how the world worked for people like her. But she didn't know that the empty seat she left behind was about to be filled by someone who would change the trajectory of the entire flight. The stage was set for a massive status reversal, and it was walking down the jet bridge right now. Just as the cabin doors were about to be secured, a final passenger jogged down the jet bridge. Adam Russell didn't look like he belonged anywhere near first class, let alone in the prestigious seat 1B. He was dressed in civilian clothes that had seen better decades of faded, oversized gray hoodie with fraying drawstrings, distressed jeans, and sneakers that were scuffed beyond recognition. He carried a battered duffel bag slung carelessly over one shoulder, looking for all the world like a drifter who had stumbled onto the wrong aircraft. He stepped onto the plane with a relaxed, almost lazy gait, checking a crumpled boarding pass in his hand. The flight attendant at the door did a double-take, her eyes widening as she scanned his ticket. She opened her mouth to perhaps direct him to economy, but the scanner beeped green a valid premium ticket. Adam gave her a wink and a warm, easy grin. "Cutting it close today. Thanks for waiting," he murmured, his voice a low, calm baritone that didn't match his chaotic appearance. He moved down the aisle, heading straight for the front. As Adam Russell approached row 1, the VIP woman was busy sipping a pre-flight champagne, blissfully unaware of the storm approaching. When Adam stopped at row 1 and tossed his duffel bag into the overhead bin, the woman choked on her drink. She lowered her sunglasses, her eyes bulging as she took his appearance. This wasn't just another ugly passenger to her. This man looked like a bum. The arrogance on her face curdled into horror as Adam pointed to the empty seat next to her. "Looks like I'm your neighbor," he said cheerfully. The VIP recoiled so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Adam Russell, oblivious or perhaps perfectly aware, slid into seat 1B, the very seat Ellie Walker had been bullied out a moment ago. He stretched his long legs out, sighing with the satisfaction of a man who had just finished a marathon. He pulled the hood of his sweatshirt up over his head, settling in for a nap. The contrast was comical. The pristine, high-fashion VIP next to a man who looked like he slept on park benches. It was a visual social experiment waiting to explode. From the back of the plane, Ellie Walker craned her neck, catching a glimpse of the new arrival. She felt a pang of sympathy for him, knowing exactly what was coming his way. But Adam seemed to possess an armor of indifference. He didn't check the surroundings. He didn't apologize for his space. He simply existed, taking up room with a confidence that bewildered the VIP. It was a subtle form of underestimation. Nobody looked at this guy and thought power. They thought problem. The VIP cleared her throat loudly, a sound like grinding gears. Adam Russell didn't flinch. She cleared it again, louder. Adam turned his head slowly, peering out from under his hoodie. "You okay? Need a lozenge?" he asked, his tone dripping with genuine, clueless concern. The woman's face turned a shade of purple, usually reserved for bruised fruit. The plane drama was back on, and this time, the antagonist was facing a very different kind of opponent. This was a setup for a classic status reversal, though no one knew it yet. Adam Russell wasn't just a passenger. He was a variable the VIP hadn't calculated for. While Ellie had retreated with grace, Adam had arrived with the weight of an anchor. He was an immovable object about to meet an unstoppable force of entitlement. The cabin held its breath, sensing that the first-class cabin was about to become a battleground for the soul of the flight. The truce of silence lasted less than a minute. The VIP, unable to contain her airport rage, snapped her fingers aggressively for the flight attendant again. "You cannot be serious," she hissed, loud enough for the first 5 rows to hear clearly. She gestured wildly at Adam Russell, who was casually scrolling through his phone, ignoring her completely. First a frump, and now a hobo? Is this a hidden camera show? Because I am not amused. Her voice dripped with that specific brand of toxic arrogance that comes from never being told no. "I demand you move this." "Individual," she commanded the approaching crew member. "He smells like the street. It's unsanitary. I paid for first class, not a homeless shelter experience." The accusation was baseless. Adam actually smelled of fresh soap and peppermint, but facts didn't matter to her, only her narrative did. She was weaponizing her status, trying to crush Adam Russell just as she had crushed Ellie Walker. She wanted him gone, erased from her vicinity, to maintain her bubble of perfection. Adam Russell finally looked up, his expression unreadable. He didn't get angry, he didn't defend himself. He just watched her with a calm, almost anthropological curiosity. "Problem, lady?" he asked, his voice steady. "I have a ticket. Seat 1B. Same as you." His lack of intimidation seemed to infuriate her even more. To her, his civilian clothes were in front, a sign of disrespect to her elite world. She turned her back on him, facing the aisle. "I want the captain," she shrieked. "I want him removed for disturbing the peace." The flight attendant was now visibly shaking. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. The gentleman hasn't done anything." But the VIP was on a roll. "He's breathing. Look at him. He's a bomb. It's a security risk." She was throwing every keyword she could think of to trigger a reaction, desperate to assert her dominance. It was heartless and vile. The other passengers were shifting uncomfortably, some pulling out phones to record the meltdown. The plane drama had escalated from uncomfortable to hostile. Adam chuckled softly, a low rumble in his chest. "You know," he said, leaning back, "stress causes wrinkles. You might want to calm down." It was a perfect retort, simple, dismissive, and targeting her vanity. The VIP gasped, clutching her pearls in a cliche of outrage. "How dare you speak to me? Do you know who I am?" It was the battle cry of the entitled. Adam just shrugged. "No idea. Don't really care, either." This was the moment the social experiment aspect became real. The VIP was revealing her true colors to everyone. She wasn't just snobbish, she was a bully. She attacked Adam not for what he did, but for what he looked like. She was judging the book by its cover so aggressively she was tearing the pages out. And Adam, he sat there like a rock in a stream, letting her water crash around him without moving an inch. From the back, Ellie Walker watched with a knot in her stomach. She recognized the tactics. She knew the sting of those words. She saw the VIP passenger trying to rally the crew against Adam, using her wealth as a weapon. It was a disgusting display of power dynamics. But unlike Ellie, Adam Russell didn't look like he was going anywhere. He settled deeper into his seat, a silent challenge to the woman's authority. The line in the sand had been drawn. From her exile in the back of the plane, Ellie Walker had been watching the scene unfold with a growing sense of solidarity. She saw the VIP berating Adam Russell, saw the finger-pointing and the sneers. Most people would have kept their heads down, grateful to be out of the line of fire. But Ellie wasn't most people. Despite her own humiliation, her heart ached for the stranger now enduring the same abuse. She saw his calm, but she also knew that even the toughest armor can crack under constant fire. In a moment of pure, uncalculated kindness, Ellie stood up. The fastened seatbelt sign was still off, and the plane was idling. She grabbed the unopened bottle of premium water the flight attendant had given her as a consolation prize for moving seats. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, she walked back up the long aisle toward first class. It was a brave walk. She was returning to the scene of her embarrassment, risking the VIP's wrath again. But her empathy was stronger than her fear. She reached row 1 just as the VIP was taking a breath to launch another triad. Ellie Walker ignored the woman completely and turned to Adam Russell. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice trembling but clear. Adam looked up, surprised to see the woman who had been kicked out earlier standing there. I saw what was happening," Ellie stammered, holding out the water bottle. "I thought you might need this. People can be a lot. Just wanted you to know, not everyone is like that." The cabin went quiet. It was a stunning juxtaposition, the ugly girl in the cardigan showing more grace and class than the woman in silk ever could. The VIP scoffed loudly. "Oh, look, the trash is rallying together. How touching." But Ellie didn't flinch this time. She kept her eyes on Adam, her expression open and kind. It was a simple gesture offering water, but in that context, it was an act of rebellion. It was a statement that decency still existed amidst the arrogance. Ask yourself, in a world that tells you to look out for number one, would you step into the line of fire for a stranger? Ellie Walker did. She validated Adam's humanity when the VIP was trying to strip it away. She didn't know who he was, she just saw a guy in a hoodie getting bullied. It was the definition of true colors shining brightest when it's dark. Adam Russell stared at the water bottle, then up at Ellie's face. For the first time since boarding, his playful, indifferent mask slipped, revealing something deeper in his eyes' respect. He saw the frayed cuffs of her cardigan, the worry lines on her face, and the genuine warmth in her offer. He realized she had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming up here. She was already the rejected seatmate, and yet she was risking further ridicule to be kind. The VIP rolled her eyes, so hard it looked painful. "Go back to your hole," She snapped at Ellie. Stop cluttering the aisle. But the spell was broken. Ellie had shifted the energy. She hadn't attacked the VIP, she had simply supported the victim. It was a masterstroke of emotional intelligence. She placed the water on Adam's tray table with a gentle nod. "Hang in there," she whispered, turning to leave, leaving behind a ripple of warmth in the freezing cold atmosphere of first class. Adam Russell watched Ellie Walker turn to walk away, and something clicked in his mind. He reached out, his hand quick but gentle, catching the edge of her sleeve. "Hey," he said, his voice dropping the sarcasm he used with the VIP. "Wait a second." Ellie paused, looking back, unsure. Adam picked up the water bottle she had offered, cracked the seal, and took a long, deliberate sip. It was a gesture of acceptance, a signal that he received her kindness and valued it. "Thank you," Adam said, looking directly into her eyes. "I appreciate it. Really, it wasn't just a polite thank you, it was heavy with meaning." He was surprised, genuinely stunned. He had expected the passengers to be sheep, cowed by the VIP's arrogance. He had expected to fight this little battle alone. But here was this woman who had every reason to be bitter, choosing to be generous. It was a plot twist in his own personal social experiment. He was testing the waters, and he had just found a pearl in the mud. The VIP let out a grotesque noise of disgust. "Oh, spare me the soap opera. It's pathetic. You two deserve each other." Adam Russell slowly turned his head toward the VIP, but this time his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You know," he said to the woman, his voice dangerously calm, "she has more class in her little finger than you have in your entire bank account." The VIP gasped, affronted, but Adam turned his attention back to Ellie, effectively dismissing the wealthy woman as if she were background noise. "What's your name?" Adam asked Ellie, ignoring the flight attendant who was hovering nervously nearby. "Ellie," she replied, a shy smile touching her lips. "I'm Adam," he said, extending a hand. They shook hands in the middle of the aisle, a moment of connection that felt like a sanctuary amidst the chaos. "Nice to meet you, Ellie. Sorry about the noise." He jerked a thumb at the VIP. Ellie laughed, a soft, genuine sound. "It's okay. Just take care." As Ellie walked back to her seat, Adam's gaze lingered on her. He was processing this new data. He had boarded the plane looking for a plane drama, expecting the worst in people, ready to prove a point about judgment and status reversal. But Ellie Walker had thrown a wrench in his cynical expectations. She proved that goodness wasn't extinct. It made what he had to do next feel even more important. He wasn't just teaching a bully a lesson anymore. He was vindicating a hero. The interaction left a palpable mark on the cabin. The other passengers in first class were watching now with different eyes. They saw the contrast aloud, abusive wealth versus the quiet, dignified poverty. Adam Russell sat back, clutching the water bottle like a trophy. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. The VIP passenger thought she was winning because she was loud, but she had no idea she was playing checkers while Adam was playing 3D chess. The engine of instant karma was revving up. Adam took another sip of water, his mind racing. He had seen enough. The test was halfway done. He knew who the villain was, and he had found the hero. Now, it was just a matter of time before he brought the gavel down. But the VIP wasn't done digging her own grave yet. She had one more level low to stoop to, and Adam was going to let her do it. The piece was fragile and short-lived. The VIP, sensing that she was losing control of the narrative and, perhaps, sensing the silent judgment of the cabin turning against her, decided to go nuclear. She couldn't attack Adam Russell on his behavior, which had been annoyingly calm, so she attacked him on something intangible and humiliating. She pinched her nose dramatically, waving her hand in front of her face as if wafting away toxic fumes. "Oh, God," she gagged, her performance worthy of a Razzie. "It's unbearable. The smell." She slammed the call button repeatedly, not waiting for the chime to finish. When the flight attendant arrived, looking exhausted, the VIP launched her assault. "You need to remove him now," she shrieked. "He smells like rotting garbage and cheap alcohol. I'm going to be sick. I cannot breathe." It was a lie, a malicious, calculated fabrication designed to humiliate Adam and force the crew's hand. There is no defense against a subjective accusation, like smell in a confined space. It was the ultimate weapon of the heartless. Adam Russell didn't move, though his jaw tightened. He smelled Fanny knew it. The crew knew it. But the accusation itself was the damage. Passengers were craning their necks, some covering their noses instinctively, swayed by the power of suggestion. The VIP was weaponizing social stigma. It's a health hazard. She screamed. He's obviously intoxicated or diseased. Get him off my flight. The airport rage had morphed into a targeted assassination character. The flight attendant, intimidated by the VIP's diamond status and expensive clothes, looked at Adam apologetically but helplessly. Sir, ma'am is complaining of an odor. She stammered. The VIP cut in. Don't talk to him. Kick him out. I will sue this airline into oblivion if I have to endure one more second of this stench. She was hysterical, creating a scene so loud and chaotic that the crew began to panic. They were losing control of the cabin. Protocol dictated that disruptive passengers be removed. But who was the disruption? The quiet man or the screaming woman? Money talks, and right now, the VIP's money was screaming. She stood up, looming over Adam. You are a disgrace. She spat at him. Look at you. You don't belong here with decent people. You're polluting our air. It was a moment of peak arrogance, a belief that her comfort justified destroying another human being. Adam sat still, his eyes locked on hers, cold and hard. He was letting her hang herself with her own rope, documenting every word in his mind. The situation reached a breaking point. The chief purser was called. Whispers of security began to float through the air. The VIP smirked, crossing her arms. She thought she had won. She thought the bum in the hoodie would be dragged off in shame, leaving her victory complete. She didn't care about the truth. She cared about erasure. She wanted Adam Russell gone, just like she wanted Ellie Walker gone. But she made a fatal error. She assumed everyone was too afraid or too indifferent to speak up. She didn't count on the ripple effect of kindness. She didn't count on the fact that when you push people too far, sometimes they push back. And from the back of the plane, a pair of eyes was watching, and a limit had been reached. The accusation of the smell was the spark that would ignite the powder keg. Hearing the commotion and the vile accusations echoing back to economy, Ellie Walker couldn't sit still. She heard the word smell, disease, and remove him, and something inside her snapped. She knew Adam Russell. She had stood next to him. He didn't smell. This was bullying, plain and simple. It was the strong crushing the weak because they could. Ellie, usually so timid, felt a surge of adrenaline that overrode her fear of authority. She unbuckled her seatbelt and marched back up the aisle. This time, she didn't walk with a shuffle, she walked with purpose. She arrived at row 1 just as the purser was trying to reason with the screaming VIP. That is a lie, Ellie announced, her voice cracking but loud enough to be heard. The entire cabin froze. The VIP spun around, eyes wide with disbelief. You again? The dumpster diver returns? Ellie ignored the insult. She looked straight at the purser. I stood right next to him, she declared, pointing at Adam. He does not smell. He is perfectly clean. This woman is lying because she doesn't like how he looks. It was a moment of absolute bravery. Ellie Walker, the rejected seatmate who had been shamed into silence, was now the voice of truth. She was risking everything: her seat, her flight, her dignitito, defend a stranger in a hoodie. How dare you? The VIP screeched, stepping toward Ellie menacingly. You're conspiring with him. You're probably just as filthy. But Ellie stood her ground, her hands shaking at her sides. No, Ellie said firmly. You are being cruel. You kicked me out because of my clothes, and now you're lying about him. It's not right. Her words hung in the air, simple and devastating. It was a mirror held up to the VIP's ugly soul. Adam Russell looked at Ellie with a mixture of awe and concern. He hadn't asked for help. He didn't need Saving had his own plan. But the fact that she was doing this, throwing herself on the grenade for him, moved him deeply. She was the embodiment of the don't judge philosophy. She judged the situation by its truth, not by the power dynamics. She was a warrior in a cardigan. The passengers began to murmur. She's right. Someone whispered. He doesn't smell. The tide was turning. The VIP felt it and panicked. She turned her rage on the crew. Are you going to let these nobodies insult me? I am a platinum member. I demand they both be removed. If you don't get them off this plane, I will have your jobs. She was cornered, and like a cornered animal, she was biting at everyone. Ellie felt the tears welling up again, the stress overwhelming her system, but she didn't back down. She stood between the VIP and Adam, a human shield against the onslaught of arrogance. She had found her voice in the defense of another. It was a beautiful, tragic moment. The vindicated spirit of justice was there, but power structures are hard to break. The crew looked terrified of the VIP's threats. They looked at Ellie, then at Adam, and made a calculation based on fear, not right or wrong. It is a sad truth of the world that often, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, especially if that wheel is plated in gold. Despite Ellie Walker's brave defense and the obvious fabrication of the VIP's claims, the crew cracked. The threat of "I will have your jobs" from a high-status passenger was a terrifying prospect for flight attendants. They exchanged nervous glances, the hierarchy of the airline industry weighing heavily on them. In the end, they chose the path of least resistance. The chief purser straightened her uniform and turned to Adam and Ellie with a cold, bureaucratic expression. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice devoid of empathy, "but we cannot have this disruption on the aircraft. The captain cannot fly with this level of hostility in the cabin." She didn't look at the VIP, who was now smirking triumphantly. She looked at the two people who had the least power to fight back. "Sir, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you both to deplane." Ellie gasped, the color draining from her face. "What? But we didn't do anything." She's the one yelling. The injustice was suffocating. It was a false defeat that felt agonizingly real. The bad guy was winning. The bully was getting her way. The system was failing the very people it should protect. The VIP let out a cruel laugh. "Good riddance. Take your trash with you." The flight attendant stepped closer, her tone hardening. "Please, grab your bags. Don't make us call the police to drag you off. It's a security issue now." It was a crushing blow. They were being labeled as threats, as problems, simply for existing in a space where a rich woman didn't want them. Adam Russell remained eerily calm, slowly unbuckling his seatbelt. "You sure about this?" he asked the purser quietly. "You're making a choice here." The purser didn't catch the warning in his tone. She just nodded, eager to end the plane drama and get the flight moving. "Yes, sir. Please leave." The betrayal was absolute. The crew, who should have been arbiters of safety and fairness, had become enforcers of social experiment gone wrong. They sided with the wallet, not the truth. What is the word for this feeling? Frustration? Rage? Hopelessness? Watching the innocent get punished while the guilty gloat is a universal trigger. It makes you want to reach through the screen and shake someone. Ellie looked at the crew members, her eyes searching for a shred of humanity, but found only closed faces. She was being discarded. They began to gather their things. The VIP was practically vibrating with glee, checking her phone, probably texting her friends about how she cleaned up the cabin. She had successfully weaponized the system. Ellie and Adam were being escorted out like criminals. It was a low point of the story, the moment where evil seems to have triumphed completely. But the darkest hour is just before the dawn, and they had no idea that the sun was about to rise in the form of a shocking reveal. The humiliation wasn't over. To ensure compliance, the crew had radioed the gate agents, and 2 uniformed security officers boarded the plane. They marched down the aisle with stern faces, responding to a call about unruly passengers. When they arrived at row 1, the visual was striking: a terrified woman in a cardigan and a calm man in a hoodie, facing off against a smug lady in silk. "Let's go, folks," one officer said, reaching for Ellie Walker's arm. That physical contact broke her. The dam held by her dignity finally burst. Ellie collapsed into sobs. It wasn't a quiet cry, it was a heaving, painful weeping of someone whose spirit has been crushed. "I didn't do anything," she choked out through tears, her body shaking. "I just wanted to go home. Please." Seeing her broken like that was gut-wrenching. She was a victim of a heartless power play, and now she was being treated like a perpetrator. The VIP rolled her eyes, sipping her champagne. "Oh, stop the drama. Save it for the jury." Her lack of empathy was monstrous. Adam Russell stood up, placing himself subtly between the officer and Ellie. "Don't touch her," he said, his voice low but with a steel edge that made the officer pause. "She's walking. We're walking." Adam put a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. "It's okay, Ellie. Come on. Keep your head up." They began the walk of shame. Ellie, wiping her eyes, clutching her bag, had bowed to hide her red face. Adam walking behind her, head high, scanning the cabin with those intense, unreadable eyes. The other passengers looked away, unable to watch the raw emotion of the scene. It was a spectacle of humiliated innocence. The injustice hung heavy in the recycled air of the cabin. As they reached the aircraft door, Ellie turned back one last time, looking at the seat she was denied, the water she had shared, and the crew that had failed her. She felt small, insignificant, and powerless. She believed this was the end of the story. She would be banned, stranded, and marked as a troublemaker. The security officers ushered them onto the jet bridge. The VIP called out from her seat, "And don't come back." The cabin door began to close. It seemed like the final curtain on a tragedy. But just as the door clicked, the momentum of the universe shifted. The narrative wasn't over. The instant karma hadn't missed, it was just loading. Ellie leaned against the cold wall of the jet bridge, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed to Adam. "I got you kicked off." Adam looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled a real wide, confident grin. He reached for the zipper of his hoodie. "Ellie," he said, "you didn't get anyone kicked off. You just helped me identify who needs to leave." Back inside the plane, the atmosphere had shifted from chaotic to confused. The problem passengers were gone, and the VIP was settled in, expecting the engines to roar to life. But minutes ticked by, then 10 minutes, then 20. The plane sat at the gate, motionless. The murmur of conversation grew into a grumble of impatience. The VIP checked her watch, huffing. "What is the holdup now?" "I have a meeting." She snapped at a passing flight attendant. The flight attendant looked nervous, whispering with the purser at the front. Finally, the intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay." The voice was shaky. "We seem to be, missing our captain. We are trying to locate him now." A wave of groans swept through the cabin. Plain drama of a different kind. How do you lose a captain? The VIP was apoplectic. "This airline is a joke." She screamed. First the riffraff, now the pilot is AWOL? Incompetence. Sheer incompetence. She was stewing in her own negativity, unaware that she was the architect of her own delay. The irony was thick. She had demanded the removal of the bum, unaware that she had severed the head of the snake. Rumors started flying. Was he sick? Was he stuck in traffic? The crew was frantic, making calls, checking manifests. The cockpit door stood open, revealing an empty flight deck. The dark screens and silent instruments were an ominous sign. Without the pilot, this multi-million-dollar machine was just a fancy metal tube stuck to the ground. Meanwhile, on the jet bridge, the scene was very different. The security officers were confused as Adam didn't move toward the terminal. He stood his ground. The gate agent came running out, looking for the removed passengers, and froze when she saw Adam. Her eyes went wide. She looked at his face, then at the manifest on her tablet. The puzzle pieces were falling into place of the ground staff. But inside the tube, the passengers were still in the dark. The delay stretched on. The air conditioning began to feel stifling. The VIP demanded more champagne, demanded compensation, demanded to speak to the CEO. She was spiraling, her arrogance feeding on itself. She had cleaned the plane, but now the plane wouldn't move. She was a queen of a stagnant kingdom. The tension was palpable. The missing captain narrative was taking hold. People were texting families, rescheduling pickups. It was a mess. And then there was movement at the front of the plane. The cabin door, which had been closed, reopened. The purser looked relieved, then confused, then terrified. Someone was boarding. The sound of footsteps on the jet bridge echoed into the silent cabin. Everyone looked up, expecting a new pilot in a pristine uniform, rushing to save the day. Instead, Adam Russell walked back through the door, the same man in the same frayed hoodie who had just been escorted off by security. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. The VIP dropped her phone. "You!" she shrieked. "How did you get back on?" "Security. He's back." Adam ignored her completely. He walked to the front of the cabin, standing right before the cockpit door, facing the passengers. He looked at the crew, who were frozen in shock. He looked at Ellie Walker, who had followed him back in, standing timidly by the galley, eyes wide with confusion. Adam stood tall, his posture shifting from the slouch of a drifter to the rigid, commanding stance of a military officer. With a slow, deliberate motion, Adam reached for the zipper of his worn-out gray hoodie. The sound of the zipper unfastening was the only sound in the plane. Zip. He shrugged the hoodie off his shoulders, letting it drop to the floor. Underneath, he wasn't wearing a t-shirt. He was wearing a crisp, white shirt with epaulets on the shoulders. For gold stripes glinted under the cabin lights. The shocking reveal hit the room like a physical blow. The wings of a senior captain shone on his chest. His name tag read Captain Adam Russell. The bum, the hobo, the smelly passenger was the man trained to fly the jet. He was the highest authority on the vessel, the pilot in civilian clothes. The silence was deafening. It was the silence of brains recalibrating reality. The VIP's mouth hung open, her face draining of all color, leaving a mask of pale horror. The crew members who had kicked him off were trembling, realizing they had just evicted their boss. Ellie Walker covered her mouth with her hands, a gasp escaping her lips. "Oh my God," she whispered. Adam smoothed his tie, picked up the PA system handset, and pressed a button. His voice boomed through the speakers. Not the lazy drawl before, but the authoritative voice of command. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Russell speaking. My apologies for the delay. We had a slight personnel issue that needed to be resolved." He looked directly at seat 1A. The VIP shrank back into her leather chair, wishing she could turn into liquid and drain away. The status reversal was absolute. The man she had mocked, bullied, and dehumanized held her life in his hands. He was the master of the sky she wanted to fly in. The underestimation had been fatal to her ego. Hit like, if you've been waiting for this moment. This is the peak of the mountain. The moment where the tables don't just turn, they flip over entirely. Adam Russell stood there, vindicated not by words, but by the undeniable reality of his rank. The hoodie on the floor lay like a shed skin, a testament to the social experiment that had just concluded. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with realization. Adam didn't rush to the cockpit. He held a microphone, his eyes scanning the faces of his crew and the passengers in first class. "I fly this route often," he began, his voice calm but stern. "And I've heard complaints about how we treat people, about the culture of elitism on my flights. So today I decided to see it for myself. I decided to board as a passenger in my gardening clothes, to see how you treat a human being when you think he has no power." He turned to the flight attendants. They were looking at the floor, shame burning their faces. "I am disappointed," Adam said simply. "You let a bully run this cabin. You let an innocent woman," he pointed to Alib, humiliated and moved because you were afraid of a platinum card. "And then you kicked me off because of a lie. You chose convenience over integrity." The crew flinched. It was a dressing down that cut deeper than any shouting match. Then he turned to the passengers. "And you all watched. You watched a woman be abused and did nothing. You watched a man be slandered and said nothing." The shame in the cabin was palpable. People shifted, unable to meet his gaze. It was a collective moment of instant karma. They were all complicit in the social experiment, and they had all failed. Except one person. Adam's voice softened. He beckoned Ellie Walker forward. She stepped into the light, trembling. This lady, who had every right to be angry, who was the first victim of this hostility, was the only one who showed kindness. She offered me water. She defended me when I was accused of being filthy. She risked her seat to stand up for a stranger. The cabin looked at Ellie. She wasn't the ugly girl in the cardigan. Anymore, she was the moral compass of the flight. "This," Adam announced, "is what this airline should stand for. Character, not the balance of your bank account. The contrast was stark. The true colors of everyone had been revealed. The VIP was exposed as a monster, the crew as cowards, and the quiet girl as a hero. The VIP in seat 1A was now trembling visibly. She knew the spotlight was coming for her. Adam turned his gaze slowly, deliberately toward her. It wasn't a look of anger, but of pity and finality. The predator had become the prey. The plane drama had reached its verdict phase. Adam Russell's test had proven a terrifying point: we treat people according to what we think they are worth, not who they are. But today, the disguise was off. The bum was the king, and the queen was about to be dethroned. The atmosphere was electric with poetic justice. Adam took a step toward seat 1A. The VIP, who had been so vocal, so large in her presence, now seemed to shrink into a singularity of embarrassment. "And you," Adam said, his voice echoing in the silent cabin, "you judged me by my hoodie. You judged her by her clothes. You called us trash. You lied about me smelling bad just to get your way." The woman tried to speak. "Captain, I didn't know." Adam cut her off. "You didn't know I was a captain? Would it have mattered if I wasn't? Does a person deserve respect only if they fly the plane?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. "You didn't treat me like dirt because you thought I was a bad person. You treated me like dirt because you thought I was poor. That is a rot in your soul, madam, not a smell on my clothes." It was a public flaying, a surgical dismantling of her arrogance. "You demanded a premium experience," Adam continued, "but you are the one who ruined the experience for everyone. You brought toxicity into my workspace. You abused my crew. You bullied my guest." He used the word guest for Ellie, elevating her status instantly. "You said I was security risk," Adam recalled, a grim smile playing on his lips. "You said I didn't belong here. Well, I have some bad news for you. I decide who belongs on this aircraft. It is my ship, and I have zero tolerance for cruelty." The VIP was pale, stammering, looking around for allies, but finding none. Even the people who had been annoyed by the delay were now looking at her with disdain. She was a villain, exposed in the harsh light of truth. "You wanted the trash taken out," Adam said cold. "I agree. We need to clean up the cabin before we depart." The implication was clear. The shocking reveal was transitioning into action. The status reversal was about to be codified. Ellie Walker watched, eyes wide. She had never seen justice like this. It was vindicated rage, channeled into a calm, professional execution. She saw the woman who had made her feel small, now looking like the smallest person in the world. It was a revenge, it was a correction of the universe's balance. "Ma'am," Adam said, dropping the microphone to his side and speaking directly to her face. "You have money, you have status, but you have no class. And on my plane, class is mandatory." The climax of the plane drama arrived with a wave of Adam's hand. He signaled to the security officers who were still standing by the door, confused but ready. "Officers," Adam said clearly, "please escort this passenger off my aircraft." He pointed directly at the VIP in seat 1A. The woman gasped, clutching her pearls. "You can't do this. I have a ticket. I am a VIP." Adam shook his head. "Not anymore. You are a disruption to the flight crew and a threat to the well-being of my passengers. Under federal law, I have the authority to remove anyone who endangers the safety or order of flight. Your behavior is a safety risk." The officers moved in. The same men she had summoned to remove Ellie and Adam were now standing over her. "Ma'am, you need to grab your bags," the officer said. The instant karma was so potent it was almost dizzying. "This is insane. I will sue you. I will buy this airline and fire you." She screamed, reverting to her airport rage. "You can try," Adam said calmly, "but you'll have to do it from the ground. And I am also placing you on the company's no-flee list. You abuse my staff and harass passengers. You aren't welcome on our wings again. A permanent ban. The ultimate consequence." The heartless behavior had cost her not just a seat, but her ability to fly with them ever again. She was escorted out, kicking and screaming, dragging her expensive luggage, a pariah in silk. As she passed Ellie Walker, she didn't dare look at her. The walk of shame she had forced Ellie to take was now hers, magnified 10 times over. The cabin erupted into applause. It wasn't polite clapping, it was a thunderous applause of people seeing justice done. Poetic justice. Adam watched her go, then turned to the purser. Get the manifest updated. We leave in 10. He then turned to the empty seat 1A. He looked at Ellie, who was still standing by the galley. Seat 1A is open, he said, a warm smile breaking through his stern demeanor. Ms. Walker, I believe that's your seat, the one with the extra legroom. Ellie teared up again, this time from joy. She moved to the seat, sitting down in the space that had been denied to her. She looked at Adam, gratitude shining in her eyes. The rejected seatmate was now the guest of honor. Before Adam disappeared into the cockpit to finally fly the plane, he did one last thing that melted the hearts of everyone watching. He walked over to seat 1A, where Ellie Walker was settling in, looking like she was in a dream. He leaned down, resting his hand on the back of her seat. Ellie, he said softly, ignoring the listening ears of the other passengers. Thank you again, for the water and for the bravery. It's rare. Ellie blushed, smiling up at him. You're welcome, Captain. Just fly us safe. Adam grinned, the charm from his first appearance returning, but now backed by the gold stripes on his shoulders. I will, but I have one condition. He paused, his eyes twinkling. When we land, I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere nice. Somewhere you don't have to wear a cardigan if you don't want to, but where you'll be treated like a queen regardless. The cabin went all. It was a perfect ending to a roller coaster of emotions. Ellie laughed, a bright, happy sound. I do love that, Adam. Even if you wear the hoodie? Adam laughed, especially if I wear the hoodie. He stood up, gave a mock salute to the cabin, and walked into the cockpit, closing the reinforced door behind him. The engines roared to life. The plane pushed back, and the flight departed. Ellie Walker sat in first class, sipping the champagne the crew had hurriedly brought her, looking out the window at the clouds. She had boarded as an outcast, been humiliated, vindicated, and was now landing with a date with the captain. The status reversal was complete. The social experiment was a success. The bad guy was gone, the good guy won, and the ugly duckling was the star of the show. As the plane climbed into the sky, it left the toxicity on the tarmac, soaring toward a horizon of poetic justice. True nobility isn't found in a first-class ticket or a designer dress. It is found in the quiet kindness of a shared water bottle and the humble strength of a hidden uniform. Adam and Ellie taught us a powerful lesson today. While clothes might make the man, it is character that makes the captain. The VIP learned too late that the most powerful people are often the ones who don't feel the need to shout about it. If you also believe that the content of your heart matters more than the balance of your bank account, then you have found your home. Subscribe now and join our community. We are building a family that stands for truth, justice, and the undeniable power of the underdog. Let's make this message fly further than any plane. Hit the like button as a personal salute to Captain Adam and his lesson in humility. Comment below with the word vindicated if watching that VIP get kicked off gave you goosebumps. And share this video with someone who needs a gentle reminder that kindness is the ultimate status symbol. And while the engine cools down on this story, don't let your journey end here. Our channel is a treasure chest of emotional roller coasters, just like this one tales of arrogance humbled and innocence rewarded. Explore our playlist and binge watch the justice you crave. But don't get too comfortable, because our next adventure is already taxiing to the runway, and trust me, the turbulence is going to be wild. Turn on the notification bell right now, so you are the first aboard when the next story lands. You won't want to miss the takeoff.